Hello, class. So this week we're going to be looking at what the remarkable body, which is a journey through digestion, absorption, and transport, and just some background. You'll be reading a little bit about the circulatory system, the nervous system, and just some basics in terms of human physiology. A couple things I want to focus on. You can read through the objectives; they're listed in your online class. First one I just kind of want to give you an introduction to is really the importance of your intestinal tract and your gut. And I want you to think about this. Have you ever heard that saying, listen to your gut feeling, or have you had a gut feeling about something? Your gut instincts. And as we look at the intestinal tract, it's rather interesting how very similar your gut is to your brain. So I want to talk a little bit about that and kind of give you this introduction here. They call it the gut-brain axis. And when we look at the connection between the neurons and the feedback that we get from our intestinal tract and our brain, it is actually pretty amazing. So if you were to look at a comparison between neurons and transmitters and some of the hormones that are produced there, take a look at this. So if you look at the brain, we have about 85 billion neurons. If we go into the gut, you have 50 million neurons. The neurotransmitters, you can see the difference there. And I really want you to focus down here when we take a look at serotonin, which most of you probably are familiar with as the feel-good hormone. So increased levels of serotonin give you that sense of euphoria or feeling better. And 5% of your serotonin is produced in your brain. 95% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. And so some of the thoughts behind nervousness or stress and the trigger to eating is this sense of you start eating and you have this release of additional serotonin. There's still a lot of unknown regarding this, so we're not really sure that the serotonin produced in your intestinal tract actually gets through to the brain and gives the pleasure centers as it does the serotonin released in the brain. But interesting nonetheless when you think about this and you think about stress eating or happy eating or all those other reasons that you might eat. So if you take a look between what would be somebody who's healthy and what's going on in terms of their intestinal tract versus somebody who's stressed or has some sort of disease, one of the things that we do find is in a healthy individual, you have nice tight junctions in between some of the villi that you're going to find in your intestinal tract. And you have nice gut flora. So we'll talk a little more about the microbiome. You have somebody over here who's stressed, and we have, oftentimes it's been referred to as leaky gut syndrome. And so with leaky gut syndrome, there's a tendency to have increase in inflammation, and some of the detrimental factors can actually enter into the body system. So again, if you're looking at the gut, it's not only is this link there between the central nervous system and the increase in some of the happy feeling hormones, but we also find that your intestinal tract is one of the largest organs of immune function in the body. So about 70% of our lymphocytes actually live here in the intestinal tract. So keeping your intestinal tract healthy is definitely an important part of keeping yourself healthy. So I just kind of wanted to give an introduction to that, why the intestinal tract is so important. And the things that keep your gut healthy, or what keep the rest of your body healthy, are the foods that you put in it. So the types of foods that you're eating, the whole foods, foods with naturally occurring fibers, all of those are very important in terms of keeping that healthy. So I just wanted to give you a little introduction in that, find it rather interesting. One of the studies as they were talking about the gut was that when you're stressed, the gut tends to increase its production of this hormone ghrelin. And the ghrelin hormone is one that makes you feel hungry, but it also reduces anxiety and depression. So as you're stressing, you increase this ghrelin, it's making some hunger, but you're also having some reduction in anxiety and depression. And the ghrelin also stimulates the release of dopamine in the brain, both directly and by triggering some of the neurons involved in the pleasure and reward pathways. And so as they've looked at this, and they've done some studies on lab mice, they've looked at the fact that increased stress in the lab rats, they tended to head more towards those pleasing foods, which would be high fat, high carbohydrate foods. So just one of the links in terms of why stress may be related to the increase in obesity in society today. So gut, kind of an important organ, very important that you understand digestion, absorption. You'll be reading a little bit more about that. One other thing I want to note, the book talks a little bit about what's called nutrigenomics. Most of you are probably familiar with this Human Genome Project where they've mapped out the genetic makeup of the human body. And from that, they're hoping to look for new cures for cancer, to be able to look at diseases. What I'm more interested in you guys learning about, because it's a nutrition class, is this topic of nutrigenomics. So nutrigenomics is really sort of looking at the interconnection of, one, your genetic makeup, the genetic makeup that you were given at birth, your overall health, and your food intake, and how these things kind of interrelate. So depending on the foods that you're consuming, you can turn on or turn off certain genes, which can promote health and or promote illness. So just to give you an example here, if we have somebody who has phenylketonuria, which is a fairly rare genetic disease, but in this individual, diet can greatly impact outcomes. So somebody with phenylketonuria, they lack this enzyme, phenylalanine hydroxylase enzyme, so they can't convert their phenylalanine to tyrosine. So if they're eating certain foods that have phenylalanine in them, they have this buildup of phenylalanine, which can then lead to ultimately to neurological damage, mental retardation. So just sort of a brief introduction in terms of how that happens. This one happens to be what we'd call a monogenic mutation because it's just one gene. So it's just this one gene that's causing the mutation. Most of the ones that we're familiar with, 97% of these diseases are monogenetic. And so it's a little easier to target. We need to have them not eat phenylalanine. The most common diseases that affect most of us today are what would be called polygenic, because there's multiple genes involved in this. So whether we're looking at something like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, we know that it's more of a polygenic mutation that's going on. So there's several factors here. It's not just nutrition. It can be stress, it can be lifestyle, it can be activity. But nonetheless, it's kind of interesting to look at the changes in things that we're doing and how that's changing us on a genetic level. So I have for you actually, and I'll send you the link to this video. And it's about I think 15-minute video. It talks a lot about the interaction of food and how it turns on and turns off diseases. So just give you another insight in terms of how the foods that you're eating may impact you, aside from just your nutritional status, how it really can impact your overall health. And then lastly, something that always comes up as we start talking about the digestive tract, and probably the hottest topic out there right now is this human microbiome. So the microbiome is the bacteria that live in and amongst us, and we have them all over our bodies. So we've got them on the exterior, on our skin. You have actually microbes that live in your mouth. The ones of greatest study right now are the microbes that are living within our intestinal tract. So microbe, basically a tiny living organism such as a bacterium, fungus, protozoan, or virus. And the microbiome, collectively, all the microbes in the human body, which would be a community of microbes. The biofilm is a community of microbes that live together on the surface of the body. So you've got both the ones that live inside you as well as ones that live on inside your intestinal tract. So again, there's a little bit of discussion about this in your text, but I'm also going to refer you to, it's a great TED Talks, 15-minute TED Talks that goes a little bit more in depth, and I think is a great explanation of kind of where we're at in terms of the microbiome. And I can tell you from my own professional experience, having gone to some of these national conferences, there's still a lot that we don't know about the microbiome. It comes across as being, the latest and greatest, and it may turn out to be that way, but the actual researchers who are involved in doing the research will come out and say there's so much we don't know about it, and we really shouldn't be making these leaps in terms of this is the thing that's causing a lot of these diseases, that the changes in the microbiome, because we're just not sure yet. But nonetheless, it's an interesting area of study, and I think it's important for you to have a good idea in terms of what the information is out there. So hope you enjoy the information in this chapter, and let's get started.